Oh man, this is not gonna end well. Okay. Hi guys, today I'm going to give you my opinion and talk about my experience with the Lumia 950 along with Continuum and Windows 10. And a little bit of a longer disclaimer first this time, because first of all, big thanks to the Lumia Voices trial team. And a big sorry as well, because I really have to apologize, because this video definitely won't be what you want to see. This video will be, unfortunately, more negative than I wanted to. I did my best trying to like the system because I'm a huge Windows fan. I'm even running Windows 10 on my MacBook Pro. I run it on every other system and I really like Windows 10. I was hoping for this device and for Windows 10 to deliver me a great experience, but sadly this was not the case, and this review will be a little bit different because I will leave out some of the details, but I want to talk about more about the experience here. And yes, so I would say let's just start here and talk about the design first, because the detail part will be a little bit shorter because we will see that. Okay, so design and build quality. As you can see here, size comparison with the Z3, which is also a 5.2 inch. As you can see, this device is noticeably wider, and that is quite unfortunate to see because we are talking about the same diagonal and display size here. It is also pretty much the same height, even though the Sony has front-facing dual stereo speakers, and it's also thicker. So the battery, almost the same, but still, so it doesn't definitely make this device very compact, and I had a hard time reaching to the other side, which is definitely not the worst thing, but also not the best. Also the material here, I just have to get that off to show you something, because this is a €600 device, $600 or anything like that, pretty much everywhere the same, and I am not okay a $600 device having a back that cheap, because look at how flimsy this is. This is like rubber. That's not even feeling like plastic, and that's maybe not even the worst part. Okay, yes, we have an SD card tray here along with the SIM, removable battery, yes, all great. But now let's check one thing here. There is usually, yeah, there is a gap here in between that you will feel, and usually it always did. At least you can hear it. There is this click, so you will feel this gap, and this doesn't make this device feel really premium, as well as the back itself, because this pretty much, if you would have them side by side, feels exactly like the Lumia 640 did, not a little bit better, and you can get the device for under $100, and this device really doesn't feel much better. I would say maximum of $250 if I wouldn't know the specs and all that. Okay, yes, here we have the speaker, which I will talk about later. The flash, the camera. On the top we have the headphone jack. On the left side there's nothing. On the bottom we can see USB Type-C, which is nice. Here we have the dedicated camera shutter button, power button, and the volume rocker. And as you can maybe see, these are shiny plastic, and those are depending on the back, because I'm pretty sure if you replace the back with the Mozo, then you will get a way more premium feeling device. But for $600 it already should come with the Mozo case out of the box, because this doesn't feel premium, and for $600 I definitely expect premium. But what about the buttons here? First of all, yes, they clicked and they have a really nice tactile feedback, but I think the power button is a little bit too low, because usually I like them at slightly above the middle, and always what I did is press the volume down button. Not the end of the world, and you can get used to it, but still. Also the buttons, if you see them maybe, they are a tad sharp towards the edges, and that just makes them feel a little bit cheaper than they would have to. So overall, not super happy with the design, and even less with the build quality for the price. But let's forget about it and quickly check the display here, and I will just talk a little bit about it, because 1440p Super AMOLED, so we get great blacks, and we can see this for example here on an app like Tweetium, and the blacks are definitely amazing, and there is no complaints about the black. The whites are a little bit dull, so you will need a little bit more brightness in most cases, which is fine, but it's definitely not the very brightest panel out there. Colors are great. We have color presets in the settings, which is definitely a nice thing to see, but overall the display just didn't blow me away. It was a little bit underwhelming. It's a really great display, but these days I've seen Super AMOLED displays that know to impress more. Colors seem a little bit less vibrant and all that. It's a really wonderful display, but it's definitely not the very best out here. And it gets the job done. It's fine. It's not a huge issue. But now let's see the sound, and this is where I'm super disappointed. I don't know. First of all, the position, in my opinion, is the worst possible, because if it's backfiring at least somewhere on the bottom, then you have some reflection from your hand, which you don't have on the top. For gaming, then yes, but usually if I hold it like this or hold it like this in landscape, I don't get any reflection. And this speaker, I don't get it. It's completely flat, no bass at all, very weak mids and just highs. It's super flat, super weak, tinny, shallow. Maximum volume is barely okay, but in a loud room I definitely had a hard time hearing it, so I'm super disappointed in a speaker from such a high-end device. Okay, let's quickly get into the performance, because the performance is a little bit of a two-edged sword, because as you can see, one thing here, that is for sure, the device is extremely buttery smooth. As you can see here, super smooth. But here is already my main issue. You have loading everywhere. You can scroll for a few seconds and then you have loading tweets again. And this is not just the case here. You will see this in pretty much every app. So scroll a little bit, loading new tweets. And this is something you will just see everywhere. The browser here, though, as you can see, super smooth. The loading times aren't the greatest and not the fastest ones, but to keep it short, the performance is super smooth. Sometimes there is a little bit of some scrolling lag or some scrolling stutter, but that's not the issue. But still, the one thing is the RAM management and the app loading, because you can see apps often have to reload within the app already, and if you jump from apps to apps, I still notice that for example, the browser has to reload tabs way too often, and we have 3 GB here on this device. But in normal use, it didn't feel any better than the 1 GB devices from Windows that I used already, like the 830, the 735. And considering we have the 3 times the amount of RAM, we don't get a really better experience, and this is super sad to see for me. So it's capable, it does all the things, but it's still very slow, because I also think the transitions here, as you can see, they are still a little bit too long for my experience, because as you can see, if I wanted to launch an app, this is, from my experience, still a little bit too slow. And here you can already see how much wasted space you have, and this is something that I will talk about the software, because I'm just not that happy. But let's get away from that and talk about the battery life. Charging time was fine, around 1.5 hours, I think, and the battery life actually not impressive, because we have a 3000 milliamp hour battery with a 5.2 inch device, and I expected something great, but this is not what I saw on Windows 8.1, because I got around 3.5 to maybe 4 hours of screen on time. This is definitely not something that I expected. From an 808 with this battery and this small screen size, I definitely expected a lot more. So let's get to the big issue here, the software. Let's just talk about it. As you can see here, we have the tiles. Either you like them, either you like them. You don't like them, but it's the app design. It still is a little bit odd. Their UI, as you can see here, so much wasted space. And I'm already using a scaling of 330%, because usually out of the box it came with 400, but I think things were a little bit too big then. But what actually changes here, for example, the browser, this navigation bar got smaller with 330%, 350%. Also Tweetium itself got smaller, but some apps like Twitter didn't really change at all. So I'm not quite sure what to say about the software, because I've used I used Windows 8.1 and I don't really see that much improvement here. Yes, the settings are improved now. We have everything is a little bit nicer organized. We have the settings here, but also things like the recent apps. I complained about Huawei devices because I don't really like this card view. If you have only 4 apps, if you have like 8 apps or something, or I mean 9 apps, it would have been nice. But this is for me not the most convenient style, and I think the software itself still has way too many issues. I had so many bugs. For example, the camera where the autofocus just seemed to stop working. It just didn't properly focus anymore. apps were not really crashing but hanging, oddly behaving, just jumping oddly sometimes. What is also really odd is something I don't get. If I am in the browser here, for example, switch to landscape mode, you would expect the navigation or the status bar to be at the top where it is on every other device, but here it's still like this, so it can't rotate. So I'm not quite sure if some of the oddities of the OS or the system itself are planned to be like this or just not fully baked. In overall, the system doesn't feel like a final product, which pretty much every reviewer said, but for me it seems like an early beta at best. So I've seen so many things that just don't seem coherent or properly working, and the whole design UI looks for me very old, because as you can see, the apps mostly are black on white, quite flat. And for example, to get to the favorites, I need to hit way too many buttons in my experience, because I have to hit the settings, then your favorites, and then I have them. So I don't know. And for example, Tweetium, which is already one of the nicer apps, is pretty much also just a plain black app. And if you could see Metro File Manager, all the apps look very minimalistic and very clean, which is nice, but also quite boring. But I don't really want to drag the software too much further and get to the camera, and that is absolutely the highlight, because selfies look really super sharp, really nice and detailed. So the front-facing camera also for video is absolutely impressive. Low-light shots were also surprisingly sharp. I didn't expect them to turn out that sharp and nicely concept with almost no noise. Very impressive. And the overall normal pictures, I gotta say, besides the small issue that the autofocus for some reason at some points just didn't seem to work at all, like it didn't feel like it had to autofocus. But if it did, then it did an absolutely great job, because I've really barely ever seen pictures that detailed, that sharp, with really nice exposure and all that. Okay, what I noticed that all the pictures mostly look a little bit oversaturated, like a little bit boosted to look just nicer, which is not an issue for me. If you want more accurate pictures, you will maybe have, or maybe more natural pictures, you will have a little bit of a harder time to get that, and will have to use manual mode and turn off rich capture, for example. But the pictures itself just look stunning, same as the video quality, because if I use, for example, 1080p 60 frames per second, super buttery smooth, the exposure was quite nice. It wasn't maybe the very fastest one, same as the autofocus, because the autofocus is a little bit on the slower side, but therefore it gets the jobs really nicely done. Colors look nice and all that is wonderfully done. I'm not so happy with the 4K footage, because that one seemed a little bit slower for me and just not really that good. I prefer 1080p 60 frames because it just looked way cleaner. But if you prefer 4K, that gets handled still very good. So this was kind of my detail part, quite similar actually to what I usually do, but let's quickly get things around again with a smaller little recap. So design and build quality. I'm absolutely disappointed, because it doesn't feel premium at all. It's not really compact, not super well built. That's all I gotta say. Display is really nice, but somehow just didn't impress me, just didn't pop. It was doing a great job, really sharp and all that, but a little bit underwhelming for some reason still. But I don't want to bash it. That is still one of the better aspects here. The sound is absolutely, I don't want to call it terrible or anything like that, but it's really bad for a premium device. That is, for a low-end device I would have accepted it, but not for $600. Performance, like I said, super smooth, but not really that fast. I didn't really find it to be faster than one of last, or the older Windows 8.1 devices. The multitasking didn't seem any more capable. Loading times were always still there, so I don't know if that's a general Windows behavior or if they just didn't optimize it properly, because I don't want to see that many loading screens throughout and that many reloading times with 3 GB of RAM, so quite disappointing actually. Battery life was also just about okay, 3.5 to 4 hours. Yeah, you have the replaceable battery, which is great, but it's not as efficient as it was back in the days. And here the software, super disappointing in my opinion, because it okay, everyone would say now the app gap is there and it will improve and all that, and people see the the potential, but I actually don't really see it, because the UI already now with a brand new system looks a little bit dated to me. I don't really see too much improvement from 8.1. The experience was pretty much the same. All the complaints I had on 8.1, like the app behavior, the recent apps behavior, the reloading times, the settings, because the settings are still way too cluttered in my opinion. Finding some things are just very hard, and also sometimes just some things aren't in the right category, because if I want to change something about the display, I want everything to be in the display, but no, color profiles are under extras and some things like that. So it just doesn't seem very organized, very coherent. Everything is just still way too cluttered. And like the case is, many teams are working on this, but they don't work together, because it's still, you noticed there is a Windows 10 team and there is a Windows 10 mobile team, and those merged, and it feels like they didn't merge properly, because so many things are okay on one end, not okay on the other end. Some do it like this, and you will notice this throughout the whole system. There are also still way too many bugs. This system just wasn't ready for prime time. The one thing also is the camera, that is absolutely magnificent if you know what's happening on the screen, because sometimes you will just have to live with the fact that the autofocus didn't work, and then maybe I even had to close the camera app. This is things that can be fixed, but once you get there, the camera qualities, the potential of the camera is at least top 3 level, because the shots, videos and pics that I did was absolutely amazing. But in the end, would I recommend this phone? And if you watch the whole review, I'm pretty sure you think the same as I do, because I absolutely can't recommend it at all. The hardware isn't worth the money, and the OS, so I think you really have to be a hardcore Windows fan, and maybe even a fanboy, to really like the system. If you are already used to Windows for a long time, then it will be okay and will be fine. But if you are coming from iOS, or if you're coming from Android, it will be hard to be convinced from this system. And that's the one thing that Windows has to do, because their market share is very small, and you have to attract people from other operating systems to get on board with this. But the Windows experience is so far off from what you see on other mobile systems like Android and iOS, that you will be shocked away from it at first. Because if you see so many things, and you will ask, do I get this app? Do I get this app? Do I get this app? And in most of the cases, the answer will be no. So, of course, they have to work on the app availability. There are still a lot of things missing. But I don't really see this as the issue, because they had to make a better framework to get things done, to get people to get the appeal of the system. And this is where I don't see happening yet, because I think the UI, the system itself, is missing so much. The UI looks already dated. It's way too buggy. And this doesn't appeal to me. And yeah, I think Michael Fisher said it really good in his 950 review. It's for the Windows fan, for the Windows user. But that's actually not the issue, because the 3% of the market share that the Lumia or the Microsoft with Windows Phone has, that's quite solid. And you don't have to convince the Windows user. You have to convince the other ones. And with this hardware, you won't get it, because you get so much more premium hardware on the other systems. You get actual better working components, and you get way more capabilities, because so many things are here that I couldn't do. And I'm not even talking about being a power user, because you have the browser that, like, actually show you one thing which is super disappointing, and I did forget that actually in the software part, because an app that I usually use a lot, or a site like this here, as you can see here how the site works, it doesn't even properly render. Okay, that's maybe one of the few sites that has this issue, but I have the same issue on Edge on my desktop system, and this is an Edge issue. Okay, I get that, but the apps are just not there. I don't have a proper browser, and I'm not the biggest fan of Edge, but there is no third-party system. We don't have a third-party keyboard system, and I'm not the biggest fan. I know a lot of people, all the Windows users, love the keyboard, but I don't, and I think kind of Microsoft agrees with me, otherwise they wouldn't have just bought SwiftKey. And I really hope that will improve, because this is for me the worst keyboard experience that I had. If swiping or with typing, it was just wrong. It didn't see my things. I couldn't use QWERTY with the English layout. If I wanted to type English, I had to use QWERTY. And if I wanted to type German, I had to use QWERTY. I couldn't just use QWERTY and type English. Just doesn't work. So I could go on and on and on and on about this, because this video is already 20 minutes long. But it wouldn't really make a difference, and I'm repeating myself, but the hardware is not worth it. All the money, the internals, not, because you can get similar internals with devices at about 400. So it's overpriced. And one thing that I didn't even talk about here, I got the starter package, because Continuum, I don't see the appeal at all. It was very slow, it was very sluggish. And it was still a Windows mobile experience, because everyone says you have like Windows 10 on your phone now on a big display, and you don't, because I didn't see that. Even easier things. You can attach a mouse, but you have no control over the mouse at all. I couldn't even change the sensitivity to make the mouse go faster, because the one out of the box and my own mouse were just way too slow. And I couldn't change it in the systems. So this has nothing to do with Windows 10, because I'm a huge Windows 10 fan. And all that I like and love about Windows 10 was just not here. It was just not available. It didn't really look a lot like Windows 10. It didn't behave like Windows 10 at all. Sorry. And once again, I am not pretending that I am unbiased, that I am objective. This video overall was very, very subjective, especially coming from Android. And I could drag this video for half an hour longer. I could talk about so many more things. And if you want to know more of these things, you can leave this in the comments. And I will make maybe one video more and just talk a little bit more about the experience and the lack of it, the things that I want to see. Because I don't want to have this opinion video or experience video, because I don't want to call it a review, to be negative. I don't want to bash Windows. And you can maybe see that as more of something like constructive critique, because I don't want to dislike it. But the way it is right now with the hardware and the software, I just can't do anything else about that, even though I would like to. And once again, I apologize to the Lumia Voices trial team for this negative review. And I actually thought about ditching this review in overall, but I thought I own it to you that someone tells the truth. I own it to the viewer. There is a lot of work to do. There is a whole lot of work to do. And one thing, if you are a Windows user, a Windows fan, totally disliked my review, and I actually, my opinion video, and I actually wanted to say this at the beginning, I'm okay with you bashing me, I'm okay with you giving me a dislike. I didn't expect anything else. I didn't want it, and I didn't want it to be that negative, but in the end, that's just how I feel. I had to express my honest opinion to keep my integrity intact, because of course I could have hyped this phone, but I couldn't. I personally couldn't get that done. So sorry for all that. Once again, if you like this video, which I doubt anyone will, then give it a thumbs up, and I'm pretty sure everyone will give it a thumbs down. If you still want to see more content like this, subscribe to the channel. If you have any hate comments, any positive comments, or any comments in general, leave them in the comments down below. Other than that, I wish you a nice day. Bye. Sorry. Yes, and this really turned out as bad as I expected to. Also way too long, but yeah.